Please welcome Tarun, founder and CEO at Gauntlet and partner at Robot Ventures.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Tarun. Tarun, you are the most technical person I have on the lineup, and I want to take a little bit advantage of that. Not for you to go deep technical, but for you to make things more approachable, if I may. So
Sure.
one of the questions I had was if you could explain MEV to an 8-year-old in one sentence. You could go more than one sentence, but how would you do it?
I think the simplest answer is you've waited in line at the ice cream truck to buy some ice cream. Someone comes up behind you and they pick your wallet out of your pocket, and then they cut you in line, buy the ice cream with your money, and then give you back the wallet. You have just experienced MEV.
Wow, that's not nice.
Well, I think it's not exactly analogous in the sense that like
Yeah,
whether someone has stolen the wallet or not is not true. Maybe they put in their own money. Maybe they paid. Like if you go to a lot of amusement parks around the world, like
yeah,
Disney, you can pay to skip the line.
yeah.
Like how they skip in front of you might differ depending on the incident, but somehow in a lot of ways it's about skipping right in front of you or going right behind you and just changing the ordering of things. So I just wanted to you said an 8-year-old. I was like, what's the easiest thing to talk about?
Ice
Probably
cream,
ice
perfect. I say 8-year-old, but I was really thinking of myself. I'm joking. If you could forcefully merge any two crypto ecosystems together to create a super chain, which two would you pick? You could never do this again. This is your only chance.
I think for the lulls, for the pure laughter, I think it has to be like trying to merge like either Base and Solana or Base and Robinhood chains. Robinhood chain's too new though, so it's like hard to make it, launch this week. So I'm gonna have to say Base and Solana. I mean, maybe it's a boring answer, but it also is kind of the most
Base and
obvious.
Solana. Yeah, I guess it would be the most.
I think the
Um,
Robinhood chain and Base merging would be funny because I think it would be the type of war that wouldn't be public. Like I don't think any of those people are going to be like writing the types of tweets that the Solana Foundation writes anytime soon.
Well, that reminds me of another question. Is decentralized finance actually decentralized, or are we rebuilding Wall Street with faster settlement?
So I think the nuanced answer is there are things where there is true decentralized finance. It has been yet to be shown that those things can scale to the size that people want or expect of a truly standalone financial system. Sorry, but the things they've been good at is like filling holes in the cracks of like where the normal financial system fails. Right, like I
Yeah.
launch a new asset, new token, I can get liquidity for it immediately in a DEX, and the DEX will generally be decentralized. Yes, there's MEV and all this stuff, but honestly, prior to crypto, there was really no way of launching an asset and have people trading it immediately in the same way, right? That just really didn't exist. And so there's, in a decentralized way, no one can censor you, stop you, government can't stop you, right? Now, the problem with that is like so far we have not made models that scale with that. I think a lot of the things that are the biggest successes in DeFi right now are not in the truest sense of like the at the era of building an L1 or like building Ethereum or Solana. They're not truly decentralized in the same way. At the same time, if I look at a lot of the decentralized protocols, they're trying to do partnerships with fintechs and Wall Street that also kind of cross some boundary that's like not fully decentralized anymore.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, it's like to scale, it seems like we have had to make some compromises. I mean, my hope and dream is that, in the world of abundant intelligence and AI and users who don't have to be as sophisticated, maybe we will find a way of scaling the purely decentralized things. But I would say right now we're sort of in the post 2017 boom, right? Like 2017 happened, there's the ICO boom. Everyone in 2016, when they saw the ICO boom, they're like, oh great, I can just launch a token on Ethereum, launch a token contract, and then it'll get listed on an exchange. Binance didn't even exist then, but whatever exchange would trade it, Gate, whatever. And then of course people realize, hey, there's censorship. Like the countries these exchanges were based in started not letting them list stuff, ... right? And then some of the exchanges would move from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And that inspired DeFi because it was like, hey, there's this thing I want to do, I can't do it, whatever. Now, arguably DeFi existed before that kind of event happened, but that event brought people into wanting to put their liquidity into DeFi. I don't currently see the same type of, raison d'etre of like, oh, this is why we need to use this stuff in pure DeFi. The irony is I see it sort of in AI a lot more, where like everyone is now worried about censorship in a way that I don't think even like a month ago, no one cared about censorship in AI. And my belief is that there's going to be, it won't necessarily be DeFi itself, but it's going to rhyme a lot with DeFi, market structure and open source AI that kind of has a lot of the lessons you learn from DeFi, but maybe it'll scale that.
I see censorship and privacy. I feel like there's more people thinking of privacy, and I might be a little bit biased because, for example, like if I reference my mom, like my mom doesn't fit the standard mom, but I see, and maybe it's also like my environment, like most of my friends might be in tech, so I don't know if that's like a general thing, but I've seen a rising interest in increasing privacy. And I wonder if that's where the industry, like gets ahead a little bit again, because, like private payments like Zcash and such. Have you thought about this?
Yeah, so I think privacy has always been this, as someone who's been investing in privacy things in crypto, AI, outside of that sort of hardware stuff, and sort of got into crypto arguably because of Zcash. And so privacy was sort of the first thing I cared about. It's been this thing where it's like everyone's stated preference is always like, yes, of course, I really want privacy. But everyone's revealed preference is like, I'm not willing to pay more for it, or I'm like not willing to compromise on accessibility, usability. Like there's always some implied trade-off. Now, I don't think that means forever that will be true, right? Like there is a version of the world where, privacy matters a lot more. Oftentimes, historically, that's happened due to, war and like
surveillance
and things like that. But right now we have a lot of the surveillance. We have some of the war, but like not in this full-fledged way. And yet people still seem to be going for convenience. And this is not me to say I don't philosophically still believe in it. I think like people often say they really care about it, but then their actions don't match their words. And like,
That's fair.
I would love to see that change, but I haven't really seen much of that.
Seen some people like deleting their Facebook accounts because of privacy and things like that. But I think on the practical side, if they're really hooked on a flow, a system, say like whatever, like their payment system, I agree with you. It might be harder to switch. Okay, so which L1 has the most technically impressive architecture, but doesn't have that many users?
It's a good question. In 2026, I don't actually know what my answer to that is. Like, I think there's a few years ago, I could have given you a very straightforward answer.
What would you have said?
I think a few years ago, I would have definitely said someone like Near would have to be.
That's what I had in mind.
There's a lot of technical impressiveness in Hyperliquid, Hypercore, but I would argue HyperVM not very impressive. So it's sort of like a weird thing where the decentralized part is not impressive. The centralized part is actually very impressive. So sort of interesting trade-off, because it's like one of these things where it's like blurring the line of like what really is decentralized and not. Obviously, it's much more decentralized than a full centralized exchange in a lot of ways, but admittedly, it's sort of like makes them blur. But there's a lot of very impressive technology there. It's just not the decentralized part is not the impressive part. Zcash, obviously, I think the hack has been hard, but I think there's stuff they will be doing. I think certainly all the ZK EVMs, ZKL1s have a huge amount of impressive technology, the Starkwares and stuff. But again, it's people don't care about privacy. They don't care about paying more. They don't care about, they're not willing to make those trade-offs. So those things have like no users whatsoever. I think those are probably high up there, but they're also the ones that I think right now it's very hard to see them ever crossing the chasm. Where someone like Near, it's like underappreciated, but like they have clearly started to find real product market fit. They have persevered through the cycles, and I think they have a very good, not just technology story, but just like community and founding story at this point that like they will survive. I think also this SWE kind of folks at some point would have certainly been very high up on there as well. So I don't totally know. Near is probably the easiest answer, but I almost would say that they're not underappreciated. Like they are underappreciated, but not so much that it's like, the ratio of technology underappreciated is not as crazy as some of the other ones. But on the other hand, some of these other ones, I'm like, they have no chance of breaking out.
Do you think Near could like break out and become like super widely, because I know they have users, but they're not like, people don't really talk about it.
I think Near, if it breaks out in the way that like Stripe breaks out, right? Like most, you're in tech, so you hear about Stripe, but like the average person in the world does not know when they're paying Stripe, even though they're paying them.
My brain doesn't even think of that. Yeah,
right,
true.
Right. So like I kind of think Near Intense is like a Stripe-like business. It's like a back end for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But it's not going to be like a consumer-facing thing, and that's totally fine, right? It could just grow a lot and be very successful, but not just and I think that's the direction they seem to be successful in. So that's kind of why I would say is like, I think people know it's good and successful. Like it's just above my cut line on the like, languishing, really smart person, because like I think they do have something working.
Yeah. What is the most elegant piece of code in crypto that also happens to be completely economically broken?
That's a good question.
You could just say first thing.
Arguably, like every oracle is economically broken, and in the sense that like I have no real guarantees on them. So, but like it's sort of, that's the duplicitous thing. The point of an oracle is to kind of bridge the gap between Web2 and Web3, so it like kind of misses that. I think arguably a lot of the meme coin launchpad bonding curves, that especially the ones that were like, we're going to be pumped up fun, but we're going to like have a special bonding curve, and then like they got MEV'd more than the pumped up fun ones. I think there's like a lot of examples like that where there's like a very good theoretical idea, or maybe very good is giving them too much credit. There's like an okay theoretical idea, but then they don't like use the product enough that they don't realize there's all these other ways of hacking it. And I think like the meme coin stuff has a graveyard filled with tons of the launch pads, tons of the Telegram bots that like had this huge growth, and then one or two users figure out how to exploit them, and then they died. And like, to me, those are actually the funniest ones, because those are the fastest economic exploits, right? They weren't even that hard in a lot of cases. They were like figuring out how to front run certain types of users, or like your Telegram bot broadcasts its transaction too early all the time, and then people front run it. It's like stuff that's not even that hard, but there was a time in the meme coin mania where there was the amount of money being lost to this stuff was egregious.
What was the biggest mistake that you've seen? Maybe it's something that is still around, actually. I mean, people are not launching as many tokens now, but what was the biggest mistake you've seen repeatedly? I guess that would be more interesting. When founders were designing their tokenomics.
Yeah, so I remember, there was this whole era of everyone being like, oh, the dev rugged by pulling all their LP liquidity. But I remember seeing one meme coin protocol, which I think was like a Telegram bot launched their own fork of Pump.fun and whatever. And they made the bonding curve such that the higher the amount bonded, the faster the the deployer could remove liquidity.
Mm-hmm.
And so it created this like horrible like wash trading incentive of like, oh, I'm just going to add my own money so that then I can pull out more first. And I think whatever Telegram bot was doing this probably did this purposely, to be honest. Like I'm on the fence of like, was it an exploit or were they nefariously purposely doing this to like capture value from their users in a bad way? And yeah, I think it was like almost 100 million from this over time. This is not like a bridge exploit where there's like this was like over a few months, maybe even 6 months, but it was like kind of egregious. I think that one to me takes the like
Yeah.
taking advantage of your users thing to the limit.
Yeah. What is something that could look perfectly secure in a smart contract audit, but it's actually a ticking time bomb?
I mean, again, the easiest answer is always an oracle, but that's kind of boring. I think like a lot of stuff, since we're talking about like the smart contract themselves versus like how it's parameterized or set up, I think a lot of stuff where I've seen kind of nuanced exploits that go missed for years has been stuff of like verifying zero knowledge proofs. I mean, like the Zcash thing, like these circuit type of problems are very nuanced, and like pre-AI, people just like were, you have the kind of the skill of the auditor, and an auditor is more of like a hacker and like a tinkerer, right? They're like putting together things, trying to like find ways to break it, but they themselves might not understand the theory, right? They're usually not people who know a lot of math, know a lot of algebra, know a lot of like how these ZK systems are put together. They're just like, I read the code and I'm gonna take a hammer and try to like beat at it in 20 different places. For the most part, there are some auditors who do know that, but there's so few of them that like, that's why the ZK security stuff is actually very hard. It's like, but obviously now, who needs the cryptography PhD anymore? Like, I have enough AI power. Now it's a little duplicitous to say that. Like, it's not totally, like, I don't think you can totally do it autonomously yet, but you're getting there. And like the AI stuff is much better at finding this out because it understands the intent of the code. It doesn't just understand what the code is. It understands like what the math that's supposed to be trying to replicate is, but in practice, like whenever you're writing code, it's never really like exactly the mathematical abstraction you have. It's always like, I put together a bunch of different things and like hopefully they approximate it well enough, right? And that's sort of the difference between the theory and the implementation. And the AI stuff is actually very good at knowing the theory enough to know how to correctly tinker. And I think the humans have been historically just, again, like not people who are good at both skills, whereas AI has been better at both skills. And that's sort of why you're seeing that. So I think if you think about ticking time bombs in existing code, that stuff has to have a ton of stuff, because I just don't think there was even real audits on them when they launched in a lot of ways, because there just weren't enough people to do it.
So you think now with AI, it would be different?
Yeah, but then it's a cat and mouse game, right? Now everyone has AI, so then it's like, okay, well, I can be very secure, and it's like there's always this like attacker defender type of aspect to this, and I think we're going to go swing the other way. I actually think the bullish thing for crypto in the long run is it's sort of like the first place to get very serious AI driven attacks. Obviously a lot of them are social engineering, but like if you look at some of the code that's written, it's like clearly, I think the attacker would have had more trouble, or it would have taken longer. They would have extracted less without AI. Like, you can tell some of the code is certainly not handwritten. And it's like, was that due to discovery from the AI, or was that due for discovery from the human, right? Like, you don't see their prompts, you don't see the traces, so you don't know, right? But I would argue there's clearly already some amount, even if it's not exactly provable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if everyone has that, the defense is going to be better, right? The AI-driven defending is going to be better. But the other thing is, there's no fucking way all this closed source shit at banks is not just going to get completely destroyed. Like, I think like there's not, I think all these people are lying to themselves. They think like my code base is safe or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think crypto is going to be the first place that everyone's going to be like, well, these guys got attacked left, right, and center first. And actually it's safe. You know, when some big bank gets exploited in North Korea and like loses $5 billion, like the way that like the US central bank almost lost $1 billion from this North Korean social engineering attack like 8 years ago. That's when people are going to be like, oh, well, what's safe? What's left that's safe? And it's going to be like, yes, crypto, because it survived all the attacks and it was done in the open and you could see what happened fully.
I see. So like with AI now, I feel like everyone can sound smart. So
yes, but they all sound the same type of smart. That's the problem. So then it's like,
that is my question. I think like you would know this, like, because you could probably pick up like the BS in the mix of things. So like what's like a concept? I'm thinking like technical, but it doesn't need to be technical. Like what's a concept or framework that I'll go specific to crypto people misuse the most to look smart?
My snarky answer is using bold text in tweets, because most people don't bother learning. Most people don't bother learning the the special characters to write bold in text in a tweet. But you can tell when everyone is copy pasting from an AI because they copy pasted the Unicode for the bold, so it like shows the bold in the tweet. So whenever you see this like bold, big text, bold, big text, I'm just saying there's some people who you can see this huge stylistic change.
Yeah.
The other thing I think that's interesting is like the kind of I think the security stuff, people are a little more like, okay, yes, they know there's stuff that's
I'm imagining like a founder pitching something and trying to sound really smart, but it's completely off, and you're like, what are you even saying?
well, I think certainly people who are like non-crypto founders or have been in crypto for a while, we're just like, oh, well, AI means I can do all this crypto stuff cheaply and for free, and I can just like make a wallet. And
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, security is solved. It's already solved. You know what I mean? Like, and I think like that aspect I see a lot of. The other thing I think I see a lot of is just like people, right, like pretending to really understand something and then just like memorizing a lot of buzzwords about it that are like correct, but then they just like, you ask them some questions about it and then they just like say the same buzzwords again. Like, this has always been true, but I think the prevalence of buzzwords has become like very high versus like before it's like maybe someone knew 1 or 2 buzzwords. Now they've memorized 30 buzzwords because they just keep asking the same question. But then you notice that the same 5 people use the same 30 buzzwords repeatedly. And you're like, all right, they clearly asked the same model, roughly the same question.
Yeah. I guess like if someone doesn't know, it's better to not even go there. I tend to project the future, like obviously is a common it's been a common trend here on the stream to talk about AI, robotics, etc. So to me, like I obviously I like talking with VCs and investors because you have to think about the future and how that's going to look like. So thinking of AI agents running on crypto rails, I'm thinking, will they replace human DeFi users? Do you think by, say, 4 years, 2030, we would see that completely taking over? Or is this me projecting a movie?
So I think rote tasks that are like execution that you right now outsource to people. I totally believe that in 5 years, like figuring out how to TWAP an order, or like why pay someone to do the TWAP for you, figuring out like how to route across multiple venues. Sure. I think when it comes to like the alpha generation stuff, I'm much more skeptical. There's like been a lot of really great work recently on like injections of people that people are doing in language models to make the models like all crowd into some trade, while like you take the other side of it. So it's like, hey, if I can ask the model the same thing, I can just find a way to basically make the models all crowd into some trade of something I either bought already or something I'm shorting. And there was a really good example of one where like someone found a way of like injecting a bunch of really what are called homoglyphs, which are like like a Russian character that looks like the letter I but isn't an I. It doesn't have the dot, like a Russian or Turkish character. Injecting a bunch of homoglyphs into research reports that are like, hey, this stock is going to do amazing, whatever, and then observing like but like the one with the homoglyph says it's going to go up, and the one with the real character says it's going to go down, and that's like done by someone who has distribution of running the report. And then they basically like track like which LLM basically is like pushing this, especially with assets like low liquidity. And so there've been a bunch of these examples where it's like tricking the agents is its own game. And I think like that's gonna, so I don't think the alpha generation stuff is like, I think people are using AI to generate alpha. I don't think AI finds alpha for you on its own. That part I don't believe, because I think people will eventually just train their agent to trick the other agents, or themselves make a strategy to trick them. So at that point, then you need to have your own custom intelligence, train your own models. This is why all the trading firms are training their own stuff, right? Versus like using commodity stuff. So I think like that's in the long run, it's like execution, yes, alpha, no.
Sounds like AI agent wars or something like that. Like
yeah, I mean, realistically, like all trading has kind of like TradFi trading has kind of been like that for a while, and it's just more that the agent stuff makes it the barrier to entry lower, but it doesn't change like how much excess advantage you have to have over everyone else. Like if everyone is saying the exact same thing, then clearly there's a strategy of trading against that somewhere, right? So I think there's certainly aspects of that. On the other hand, there's also like a higher likelihood for like meme stock type of things where everyone is crowding irrationally for a very long time because all of their AI agents are saying the same thing. And so there's going to be a whole class of trades that's just like follow the trends from the agents. And then, kind of, so like, I think it's just going to be more like the strategy space gets more complicated for the alpha side.
Do you remember that? I can't remember his name, but like there was a guy that that started a fund, and the investments were all analyzed by AI. Like everything he got was AI driven. Like the entire thing. Did you see this? I don't know if this rings a bell.
No.
So he was performing. It was performing amazing, and it made news. So I was wondering if at some point that becomes a thing. Of course, like if everyone, the argument could be like, oh, if everyone has an agent, then anyone could do that. But also, like perhaps he has an edge because he's early, or he's actually really good at giving whatever instructions.
Yeah, so the value is going to be your context or memory, how much you've trained customly in certain environments, right? That part, no doubt, right? There's no doubt that that's going to be the
because he didn't have any experience. Like I must add that, like he was very young, and
But that stuff is very human, right? That stuff is like what you're putting into the model, not what you're getting out of the model. That's what I mean. Like alpha generation is still going to be what you put in, is what you're not going to be able to like get it to give you some great hypothesis that no one else has early.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. What's the most unhinged but brilliant research paper you've read lately?
Unhinged.
More on the unhinged than brilliant, just because I feel like that would be more.
I think there have been a lot. There's like this, I don't know about unhinged, but I'd say,
Okay.
Prediction markets have existed for a long time in the academic literature, since 2003. Realistically earlier, but like 2003 is, I guess, like one of the bigger kind of papers came out. And what I'm finding now is there's this like kind of like FOMO / jealousy from all these academics who like wrote all these papers from 2003 to 2015 of like the theory for how you should design prediction markets. And then of course it turned out it was like kind of not correct. Like crypto people found something that was more correct. And then obviously now it's like kind of even different than that. Because again, these are this hybrid decentralized model. So it's like that changes the way it works. But there are all these papers written by the same people just trying to be like, oh, like prediction markets are a scam, whatever. And it's like unhinged because it's like they're just like jealous of their old work being successful. Like they're just like, oh, everyone is front running you. The oracle's always manipulating. Like, and it's just like kind of funny. It's like these people invented this field. People figured out, took the entrepreneurial risk and became successful building the things from that field. And then after it's successful, they're like a curmudgeon, like, oh, I didn't make that money. So like, you know, fuck these guys. I'm going to like try to take that. So I feel like that's a little unhinged. It's like a 20-year revenge arc. You know what I mean? That's like.
Yeah. Do you think that, I was talking about earlier about the trends, and you just mentioned prediction markets. I have a feeling that prediction markets could be a trend. I don't know if I'm off on this, but I think this is. I would like to ask you that question. Like, do you think prediction markets will have eventually? They're on a timeline basically, and eventually will die off, or do you think it's going to sustain the same way like people invest in stocks and such?
Oh, I think to me, there's no doubt in my mind, but obviously I'm a biased early investor in prediction markets, so maybe that's a caveat. But like, you know, invested in prediction markets in 2015 in a bunch of failed ones that were centralized. I also invested them in coin market and stuff, but in 2020. But I just don't think there's any turning back. I think like the genie's out of the bottle. People love this stuff. It's more accurate than news. I think my bigger take on prediction markets is that the markets themselves are actually going to end up being kind of inefficient / not making that much money for the venues.
Yeah.
But they're going to be more like media companies where like people, I mean, you already see this in like, if you look at the number of visitors to Polymarket and Kalshi secondarily, it's so much higher than the number of traders. Like it's a very small set of the audience is actually providing the truth seeking, like the journalist function of like trading, right? But there's a credible number of people looking at it, and there's sort of an influencer economy that's already starting to be kind of built up of like how you curate the news on Polymarket, how you curate which markets are interesting, what you're showing certain markets to your social media feed first, you know, like here's the alpha in this market, right? So there's a sense in which they have a bit of like a social media / almost media company aspect of like people care more about the price of the market than trading on the market. And you can't say that's true about most financial markets, right? Like where, you know, yes, there are some stocks, some, you know, it's by and large, there are exceptions, but most people really do care about, who are looking at it, care about trading it. Prediction markets kind of are almost like a media company though. And I think their terminal value, they will be much more valuable because they have competed with and successfully replaced media and or social media.
Yeah.
It's just like the prediction market itself is almost just like a mechanism to like enforce some amount of truth seeking. But after that, their competition is much bigger.
It's a bit of entertainment. Like it feels like it's financial social media in some way.
It's like all of this decentralized social media garbage bullshit stuff that people have done over the years. Like,
yeah,
prediction markets are basically that. They are a better version of that, and they are a version that makes money without the media part being monetized. Imagine if the media part was monetizable, it would be a totally different game. Like they would be bigger than Meta, right? Like I think that's why Meta wants, like I think it is actually disruptive to social media companies in my opinion, long term. Like not now.
Long term, okay. In what way? Like, because you can comment on their markets, but you can't really do. There's no
So like,
DM.
if you look at early Twitter, one of the reasons Facebook was very nervous about Twitter was like Twitter was the only social media network that like journalists went on and broadcast live news. Like people would first read. I mean, it's still kind of true, not as much, because now like every social media is like kind of interconnected. But there was a time where it was like the first place to see the breaking news in a war zone, right? Like Arab Spring 2013 or whatever. And Facebook then started doing all these deals with publishers to like get the publishers to put all their content on Facebook, so Facebook would get some first mover advantage, and that did kind of shrink the gap. But there was a time where people's entire consumption of certain social media networks was purely to read the news, basically. And in some sense, people stop believing the news as much as they believe a prediction market, which the elections have shown for some events that's very true already. But imagine that's a larger portion of events in the world. There is going to be some point at which it just is the news source you look at. You will go to polymarket.com, you will go to tiktok.com, and it'll show you you go to Robinhood and it's showing you the things, right? It's like at some point that will be a story. Like the trading activity will generate a story itself. Like the AI will read the trading activity, it'll read the news elsewhere and generate the story, with the prediction market giving it some truth, some way of not hallucinating. And in some sense, that's how people are going to consume media and social media and the news in the future, more than what you see now. That's like my long-term belief.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I like that. Tarun, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really fun. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks. See ya.